G'day everyone, Prep Aussie here. I hope you're all well in whatever part of the world you're watching this video. Today is Thursday the 27th of September 2018 and the time here is 10:30 Australian Eastern Standard Time. Okay folks, well I hope you enjoy this video if you get to watch it, because I've just spent the last hour trying to fix this computer up to try and get a video out, because somewhere along the line all my, I use a microphone here, all the what's names for that were disabled. Look, you can't make this shit up, honestly. You start thinking that you're going crazy. Somehow they all disappeared, so I couldn't record anything, but I think I fixed it, and I'm going to take you down a rabbit hole today in regards to all this Russia collusion story and the Alexander Downer story. And it's going to be interesting, so pay attention. I'll try and do it as fast as I can. Here we go. First off, let's set the scene. Barack Obama gets into the White House the second time, and here's a list of his cabinet. Now the interesting thing here, as you actually go through all this, is that nowhere does it mention security in regards to FBI, etc., etc. Nowhere. So then you realise that the person who is running the FBI, CIA, NSA, because they must come under a branch of the administration. They can't just run themselves. So that person has to be Loretta Lynch, basically the Attorney General. Now, if you look up here, Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, Eric Holder. These two clowns. She doesn't come up. He does. There you go. So those two people were running the FBI, the CIA, and the NSA during the last days of the Obama administration. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Did you know that James Clapper paid a secret visit to Australia in 2016? I didn't. I just found out about it. And here's that information. US spy boss James Clapper Jr. makes secretive visit to Australia. Now, he flew in here, had a meeting with high-level Australians in the Australian government, and then was gone. Now, you got to ask yourself, well, that's kind of weird, because the day he was here, apparently, this was put up on the 16th of March 2016. So it doesn't actually tell you what date he was here, but it was around about, it was in March. That's probably all we know. March of 2016. Now listen to this. Before flying to Australia, Mr. Clapper stopped over in New Zealand, where he met with Prime Minister John Key. That's the New Zealand Prime Minister. At the bottom here, last week, the Australian Federal Police hosted the Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigations, James B. Comey, on a 2-day visit to Australia. Mr. Comey also met with Attorney General George Brandis and Justice Minister Michael Keenan. Okay, just remember George Brandis, okay, because that's that's important. Because George Brandis at the time was the Attorney General of Australia, i.e. looking after security, etc., etc. This is a big rabbit hole, folks, so get prepared. Okay? The interesting thing is that James Comey also went to New Zealand to meet with John Keys. Why? Who knows? But they were both here at the same time. Weird, hey? Now, at the same time, Alexander Downer was the UK or the Australian representative or the Australian boss of the UK High Commission in England. Just in case you're wondering who he was or who he is, this is him here. At that time, he was the Australian High Commissioner in the UK. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Right, let me go down the bottom here. Okay, I'm going to read this bit here. On the 10th of May, 2016. Now remember that Comey, etc., had been in Australia just 2 months previous to that date. Okay? So Clapper and Comey were both in Australia 2 months previous to that date. Make sense? I'm reading this bit here. On 10th of May 2016, according to the New York Times, Downer met with George Papadopoulos in London, and information from this meeting caused the FBI to open a counterintelligence investigation into Russia's attempts to disrupt the 2016 US presidential election, and whether there was involvement by Donald Trump's associates. Downer told the Australian in April 28th, 2018 interview that nothing Papadopoulos said in their meeting indicated Trump himself had been conspiring with the Russians to collect information on Hillary Clinton. Then if that's the case, why did Downer take the information and give it to the UK authorities? Think about that. He just said there was nothing in that conversation that led him to believe that Donald Trump was colluding with the Russians. But why did he give that information to the UK? This is weird, folks. Honestly, this is absolutely... They're mad, these guys. They really are. Even a child could tell you that these guys are working in collusion together. Gets weirder. Okay. So this is David Cameron. David Cameron was the Prime Minister of England until 2016. The reason why David Cameron gave up the Prime Ministership is because he lost, supposedly gave it up, was because he lost the Brexit vote. Now, that might sound fine and dandy, but Theresa May took over from David Cameron. Did you know that Theresa May was the Home Secretary of the UK from 2010 to 2016? What does that mean? Well, in essence, she was the Attorney General looking after all the security firms, MI5, MI6, etc., in the UK from 2010 to 2016. And here is your proof. Home Secretary of the United Kingdom, 2016, Theresa May, from 2010 to 2016. I couldn't even write this novel like this. It's that entangled. Now, this is going to surprise you, maybe. The Australian Prime Minister at that time was Malcolm Turnbull, because Tony Abbott got removed from office on the 15th of September 2015. So the leader of the Australian government at that time was Malcolm Turnbull, and the Foreign Minister was Julie Bishop, and the UK High Commissioner to Australia was Alexander Downer. The Attorney General for Australia at that time, 2016, was George Brandis. Are you following a pattern here? Okay. The border security person and treasurer was Scott Morrison, the current Australian Prime Minister. Honestly, folks, I can't make this shit up. So, whatever was happening in the UK with Alexander Downer, Julie Bishop, George Brandis, and Malcolm Turnbull knew 100%, and Scott Morrison knew 100% what was going on. 100%. That's why Scott Morrison got voted into power over Dutton. Because they're trying to cover their ass. And they need to cover their ass because this is coming out and it's going to be big. It's going to be real big. Right, so let's move on from there. The Prime Minister of New Zealand at that time was John Key. Now, the interesting thing there is John Key met James Comey because he flew over, and James Clapper. Now, this gets really interesting. Watch this. Did you know that John Kerry, the US Secretary of State, i.e. the third person in line for the presidency of America at that time, if Barack Obama died and Joe Biden got killed, then John Kerry is the president of America. Let me read you this, because you guys are going to go, you've got to be shitting me, right? John Kerry, on the day of the US election, was guess where? Antarctica. That's right. He wasn't even in America. He was in Antarctica. And then he met John Keyes, the the New Zealand Prime Minister. Let me read this to you. United States Secretary of State John Kerry has quietly slipped into New Zealand today as Donald Trump stunned the world in the race to the White House. As the world reels with news that Trump appears to have beaten Hillary Clinton to become the new US president, the Democrat Kerry, who lost the 2004 American presidential election, has been flying down under. Kerry's US government jet touched down at Christchurch International Airport shortly after 5 p.m. with little fanfare. Tomorrow, the 72-year-old, so he's a 72-year-old diplomat, will travel from Christchurch to Antarctica, where he will be the most senior United States official ever to visit the icy continent. So is it just me sitting there going, what the? What? Now, ask yourself this question. Why would John Kerry fly all the way to New Zealand on the election day and then go to Antarctica on the election day in America? Never ever happened before, folks. Probably never ever happen again either. Why? Okay. I'm going to throw this out there. New Zealand, i.e. John Keys, Prime Minister of New Zealand, was used as the conduit to pass on the information from Alexander Downer, the Australian High Commissioner in the UK. The information was given to New Zealand. New Zealand gave the information back to the UK, and the UK, MI6, MI5, whoever you want to pick, decided that they wanted to bring down the Trump presidency and release the information via the, they thought up this great Steele dossier or whatever. So New Zealand and Australia are massively tied into this. Now, watch this. Note the date of this, 9th of November 2016. 9th of November 2016. Now, look at this. 3 weeks later, don't even think it was 3 weeks, John Keys, the New Zealand Prime Minister, up and resigned from politics, out of the blue. But also, while John Kerry was in New Zealand, they had a massive earthquake, picked up the country by 2 meters. Some people say that it was because of this boat that people saw. So it was a nuclear bomb or whatever. I don't know about that, but all these things happened while John Kerry was there, the earthquake, etc., etc. And then 3 weeks later, John Keys resigned from Parliament. The most effective New Zealand Prime Minister, some people have said, in years. Just up and left. That's it. I've had enough. I'm gone. See you later. You can't make this shit up, folks. This is all true. So then, in Australia, we have this thing with Malcolm Turnbull and his party. And you would have to think that somewhere along the line, the chickens have come home to roost, and this is all coming out about the Australian Parliament's involvement. And those people sitting in Parliament right now will know what's going on and what has happened, and are secretly trying to protect their asses. I've got one final thing to show you, which is going to make you laugh. Guess who is the current High Commissioner of Australia to the United Kingdom? The one and only George Brandis. That's right. The bloke who was the Attorney General when Alexander Downer met with George Papadopoulos. You see, because Alexander Downer cannot just get up and give the information to the UK government and New Zealand governments. He has to work with the Australian government, and he also has to work like that with George Brandis, the Attorney General of Australia. So George Brandis is now in the UK trying to protect a core group of people from the Australian government, i.e. Malcolm Turnbull, etc., etc. Where's Malcolm Turnbull now? America. I wholeheartedly believe Malcolm Turnbull went to America and is being interviewed by a grand jury in America as regards to Australia's involvement with the whole Russia collusion story. I'm being dead serious. I would reckon that he'd be sitting in rooms talking, being interviewed by people and saying, well, why did you do this? Why did the Australian government turn on us? And then you've got this guy, George Brandis, currently sitting in the UK begging, and I mean begging, the US government not to release the details of exactly what went on. Out of all this, where is Alexander Downer? Because Alexander Downer is now a foreign spy working for a foreign government. Is an Australian spy working for a foreign government, i.e. the UK. That's how serious this shit is. And they can try and wriggle and worm and everything else, but they ain't going to get out of it. The only reason George Brandis was sent to the UK is to try and bottle all this up and trying to hush it up and try and protect the people in Australia. Julie Bishop, Malcolm Turnbull, Scott Morrison, George Brandis, Alexander Downer, the Liberal Party, and interesting to note, John Keyes, when he left, where did he go? America. And as I said, you can't make this shit up. Okay, folks, verse of the day. For we know him who said, it's mine to avenge, I will repay, and again, the Lord will judge his people. It is a dreadful thing to fall into the hands of the living God. You can't make this up, can you? That's so good. Verse of the day, I'm going to read it again. For we know him who said, it is mine to avenge, I will repay, and again, the Lord will judge his people. It is a dreadful thing to fall into the hands of the living God. And finally, folks, as always, the Lord's Prayer. And I'm going to dedicate this prayer today for the truth. Because the truth is coming out and there is a huge shit fight about to hit the fan. The Lord's Prayer. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, for ever and ever. Amen. Well, it went a bit longer than normal, folks, but I hope you enjoyed that. And if I'm correct, next week, the shit is going to hit the fan. And you're going to see people flying left, right and centre over different countries trying to beat this, because as regards to Downer, Turnbull, etc., you're talking about treason here. This is all treason. Brandis, Downer, Bishop, Morrison, the Liberal Party, whoever was involved in this, 100% treason to Australia. I hope you understand what I'm saying. they've tried to take down a foreign government, and not only that, they've tried to take down the US president, our number one ally. So how do you think Trump feels? As I say, folks, please like, share, and subscribe. God bless all. Prep out.